Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us here at CPA Academy. So excited to have Fourlane here. Marjorie Adams will be your presenter today for mid-year changes to QuickBooks Desktop. I'll be handing over just one moment. My name is Nathan Folkler. I'm your friendly moderator here over at CPA Academy. I'm going to help start us off, make sure everything's working okay for you, the audience, make sure you know how to ask questions. If you want to ask Marjorie any questions during the session, there's a questions pane, lets you know about your handout, which we just updated, and of course, lets you know about your CPE. So let's get started. If you wouldn't mind drawing your attention to the GoToWebinar control panel and that question pane, I'm looking over, I can see people typing in already. If you hadn't already, go ahead and go in there, say hello, let us know what brings you here today, what interested you in this course. Just let me know the audio is working. Make sure you can see that's your screen, that first slide up. I want to make sure everything's working before we jump into it. You'll also see the handout PDF in that same area. There's a handouts pane, and then we added that to your account, I believe at cpaacademy.org as well, so feel free to download and follow along. So this is a 1-hour course that's eligible for 1 CPE. In order to get that credit, you do 2 things: attend this full session and answer the polling questions. Those polls are going to be launched periodically. You just need to select the radio button that best fits your answer, submit, and you're good to go. We'll try and get your CPE processed a little bit later today. You should see it in your account by tomorrow. We'll also be recording the session. We'll make that link available to you in the post-webinar email. So let's see here. Hello, audience. Who do we have? California, North Carolina. Let's see here. New Jersey, Maryland, Maine. People from all over. Alabama. Thanks. More people are posted in here. Looks like things are working. That's a good sign. I think we're ready to go. So Marjorie, thank you so much for being here today. Our audience is ready. The floor is yours.
Thanks, Nathan. Hello, everybody. I didn't see anybody hi from Texas yet, so hopefully we'll see a couple of y'all from down here. Thank you for joining us for our course today. So we are talking about, it's just a couple months from launch of QuickBooks 2019, right? QuickBooks Desktop 2019, and already there has been a major update in the R3. I just saw that. Hi from Austin, us too. So these features have been released a few weeks back. So if you did update to R3 already, you might have already seen some of these features. We wanted to wait until after the holiday week when everybody gets to sleep off their turkey brain before focusing on this great release that came out. So we're going to be looking at 2 major changes today. One is QuickBooks Enterprise only, and the other is available in all versions of QuickBooks Desktop. Of course, for QuickBooks Enterprise and Pro and Premier Plus users on active subscriptions, you guys will get 2019 already and any features. If you need to move from Pro Premier to Enterprise because of this new feature today, or one of them specifically, please let us know. We can definitely help you out. So as we said in September, this is a very exciting year for QuickBooks users once again. Intuit is saying it's the easiest and most productive QuickBooks ever. So please be sure to take advantage of being in the know on these features and give feedback, and so we can continue to better the QuickBooks product. Also, if you can get your customers to utilize these features, as we all know in the consulting space, our customers teach us so much. More than what we're capable of just learning by doing our own testing. So getting user adoption out there is only going to make everybody's world better with all of these new features that are being released. Any feedback today, as I was saying, is much appreciated. I do believe the enterprise product managers are also on this call listening in today, so they'll take that feedback as well. Also, if you have any ideas of product improvements throughout the call, just kick them into the questions or into the chat section. I'll definitely pass them along. I know that we're always open for ideas when we're looking at, providing feedback to Intuit for how we can better their products. Okay, so let's go ahead and move forward in our slide here. Maybe. So I'm Marjorie Adams, and I own and operate the consulting firm Fourlane, headquartered out of Austin, Texas. Although, as many of you know out there, we are a 100% remote firm, so we have locations throughout the country. Our firm's focus was originally on project-based work, primarily providing conversions and work process solutions to enterprise customers. We always say if your month end is not completed within the following month, if you're not looking at a budget versus actual report monthly, If you're not quite sure what is sitting in that employee advances balance on your balance sheet, then these are areas where we can really focus. Just yesterday, I was telling a prospect that didn't monitor their AR much, right? They said, oh, I don't really care about my AR balance. You know, it's just money that people owe me, but I see the money come in. They had over $1 million sitting in their AR account. So of course we had to, you know, break the news that if any balance on that balance sheet is we can't substantiate, then pretty much everything else is probably incorrect. So we just definitely want to focus on those numbers, especially this time of year. So over 10 years, Fourlane has grown to over 35 employees. We have the largest QuickBooks Enterprise customer base. Starting in 2017, we also brought on a step-up product. We call it a step-up product from QuickBooks, Acumatica. For those customers who are outgrowing QuickBooks and want a true cloud product. We're also looking to hold the largest Acumatica customer base within a few years here, so making a goal for our internal team. Acumatica is my new love. If you haven't seen it or are curious about it, what's outside of the QuickBooks world, definitely let me know as well. If you haven't heard about it, it's definitely like buzz throughout the community here. So as I mentioned at Fourlane, we focus heavily on process and accurate review with our customers. Inventory has always been a focus of ours, which is why this new release is such a big deal. All right, so this course is considered basic. You need to have a basic understanding of QuickBooks to be able to replicate these topics with your team or clients. It may feel like we move through some areas a little bit quickly, but that's because we expect that you have a little knowledge of QuickBooks already. I will have time for questions, and then any extra time that I may have, I'm going to do some refreshers on maybe some other features that came out in September. Not expecting to go through too much there, but if we have extra time, we will do that. Okay. So by completing the course today, you should be able to identify the key features of using cycle counts inside of QuickBooks Enterprise and identify the updates to use the .iif file importing. So we've given everybody a couple minutes to trickle in here. Let's go ahead and launch our first poll. Why are you attending this webinar? So you're interested in cycle counts, interested in the IIF file importing, general industry interest, and or CPE credits. All right, let that trickle in here for a minute. I know I didn't announce it, I guess, in the first little section here that the big release that we're going to talk about is cycle counts. So surprise, I am super excited about it. We've seen it in the, coming along the way for a couple of months now. I guess since the beginning of this year in the beta and alpha testing. So I'm super excited that it's ready to launch and also super excited to get everyone's feedback. All right, give it another 5 seconds here and we can go ahead and close out. So thank you guys so much for that. And we can share, everybody can see general industry interests, interested in cycle counts. Perfect. Okay, so let's get started. So first off, what are cycle counts? And why do they matter? So cycle counts are a way to audit your inventory. No matter how perfect an inventory system you have, there are always going to be some items that when you count them, right, when you go in to count them at year end or quarter end or whatever, how many you count compared to how many you actually have noted in QuickBooks will probably not tie out. This is normal in business. Not everyone can get it right 100% of the time. It may be frustrating, but it happens. However, our goal, right, is to take any of those differences and learn from them and better our processes so that there are fewer differences next count. So what can we change to make sure that we are tighter next time? The term cycle count we use because we count different inventory parts in different cycles. As an example, if you're an HVAC company, as an example company, you sell AC units, which are sold less frequently than the filters that you sell when you replace, you go out and you replace the filters to your customers every couple of months, but the AC units you only have to sell every 10 years. I don't know how often an AC unit has to be replaced. You probably need to count your filters more frequently than your AC units because you utilize them more, and you need to be sure you never run out of stock for your techs. The filters you may put on, let's say, a bi-weekly cycle count, but the AC units may be a quarterly cycle count because we don't run through them as quickly. So that's the background on cycle counts. So now we're going to go ahead and hop in products. Let me minimize my PowerPoint here. Okay, and open up QuickBooks. All right, hopefully everyone can see that screen there. So now remember, the following cycle count feature is only available in QuickBooks Enterprise, and it's the Platinum Edition. Okay, so the edition with the advanced inventory. You can tell if you have the Platinum Edition or if your clients have the Platinum Edition in product. If you go to Edit and Preferences, over to your Items and Inventory, and then your company preferences here, and you see this Advanced Inventory Settings box. That box is grayed out. That means that they do not have access to the Advanced Inventory Settings, which means they probably do not have Platinum, or at least they need to sync their license before they have it accessible. And of course, it's important to not get confused here with the Enhanced Inventory Receiving Settings, right? Advanced, Enhanced. That's available in all versions of QuickBooks Enterprise. So Advanced Inventory Settings, that's how you know if they have the Platinum Edition available. Today, we're going to be looking at two pathways to use cycle counts. The first is using Excel, and the second is going to be using an Android device. So your clients have a couple of options out there. Before talking about the new way, let's review the old way briefly. Hopefully it will be a thing of the past. So what we used to do, or what we've had to do for years in QuickBooks, is that we would go in to our report section, down to inventory, and we have this physical inventory worksheet. Okay, now of course I just have a couple things in this sample file because I wanted to focus us. But this inventory worksheet shows your item description, the vendor, and how many you have on hand. Lots of times we would recommend to people to remove how many you have on hand, right? Because when you give this sheet to people to count, you don't want to tell them how many are supposed to be there. And then we would print this out or export it to Excel, give it over to the people who are counting, okay? Not really having a great way to count or to keep track of who's counting what. And then once they came back with our physical count, we would have to go in and do adjust quantity value on hand. Okay. And adjust the quantity. I usually recommend to everyone do quantity and value just so you can review both while you're doing it if you're doing it this way. And then of course we would have to come in and type in each individual line. Oh, champagne flute. Okay, I'm going to adjust that to 117. Oh, champagne mug, I'm going to have to adjust that to 698, right? So very tedious, very manual. There wasn't a great process for doing that. We could go in and do find and select and add all items and then just kind of weed through them, but it was very tedious. It also opened us up for a lot of human error. So we'd have to come in here, post this entry, then go back and have somebody review it against the count sheet again. So there was just a lot of potential for error along the way. So now we're moving into a new world. Okay, so there are no preferences to enable cycle counts. It's just under your inventory drop down here. So I didn't realize when it first got released, I was saying, I know it got released, but I can't find it. I was looking in my preferences, but it's just under the inventory drop down here. The first time you click on cycle count, you will have to log into your Intuit account. So make sure that you have that information available. Once you click into the cycle counts, the cycle count dashboard will come up. This will show you all counts during the last 30 days. Okay, so if it's a count outside of 30 days, it will fall off this list. You can search here. through the count ID field that is generated, or we can generate it too, we can modify it. We can search through the item or the description. We can narrow down the count. So we can say, only show me counts for particular sites. Again, if multiple warehouses is only available in the Platinum Edition, but if you are using multiple warehouses, you can narrow down and say, show me the counts for only particular sites. Also statuses, and we'll talk about the statuses here in a minute, and then how are we gonna sort it by. Now this screen is very similar to the bill tracker and the income tracker in QuickBooks Desktop. So if I were to go and do anything off the screen, so let's say I went in and entered a bill, or I went in and did an inventory adjustment or anything like that, I would have to hit refresh on this screen to refresh it with live data, or close out of the screen and reopen it. Okay, so these screens are not live. They don't refresh live like the reports do in QuickBooks. So you just have to be aware, especially this one is kind of hidden over here. So refresh data. Okay. Looking down at the information, these are showing each line on a particular account. So you can see how this one has the same number. That's because this is for count 002-01, and we counted the champagne flute. And then on the same count, we also counted the mug. So you're seeing each line on the counts. We counted these two here, we counted 3. Okay. We also see the date created. So that's something that is system generated. We see when did we initiate this count? When was it last updated? Again, system generated. What items we're counting, the description, what site we're counting at, the quantity on hand. And this is the quantity on hand that the system showed prior to us doing a count. This is the counted quantity that came back when we did the count. This is the difference, right? Just math. And then this is the warehouse user that we assigned it to. So this comes in handy a lot with the Android devices, but even if you're not using the Android devices, this is super helpful, because if you assign someone to go count particular products, you now know who's responsible for doing that count. Okay, so I like that you can assign warehouse users here. Then we can take any kind of internal notes and what our status is. All right. Going down below, we do have batch actions. So notice that we can check boxes or mass select on top. I guess maybe not the mass select. Oh, there we go. Mass select up top to hit multiples. Once we do that, we can come down below, and they have export to Excel, which we'll be looking at in a minute. We can adjust quantity on hand. So we'll look at that in a second as well. And then we can also just mark them as closed, which is basically like saying it's completed. Okay, and we'll look at that whole process. Now, of course, we have a button here that says import from Excel. So there's a little bit of what's about to come. And then we have the previous and next and save button down here, etc. So just giving you a little tour inside the cycle count dashboard here. Okay, so now taking this just a step further, hopefully everybody gets a lot of interesting thoughts from this as well. So before we go into how does the cycle counts work, one of the things that I wanted to really touch on is that we're going to go into the items, and we're going to set up how we can easily, right? In my file here, I just have a couple of items. But if you have thousands of items or even hundreds of items, it can be a lot to manage to figure out, you know, which ones do I need to count this time? Which ones go on the weekly count list versus my quarterly count list? So we came up with a process here that you guys can utilize. So on my items list, we're going to go ahead and edit any item. So I'm just going to choose my mug here. Okay, and then we're going to go over to custom fields. Okay, and then define fields here. So I'm going to be setting up a custom field at the item level. All right. So I'm going to go ahead and call it, you can call it whatever you want, of course, but I'll call it cycle count just because that's what we're talking about. I want to make sure to check to use it. Now, because I'm in QuickBooks Enterprise, this is an enterprise only feature, I can choose to use multiple choice lists when it comes to my custom fields. So I'm going to definitely choose to use a multiple choice list. Multiple choice lists allow us to create consistency. They don't allow people to, misspell things, and then we can't ever find this information. So, so in here, my multiple choice list, I'm just going to create some fake things here. So CY apple, CY banana, and CY cherry. Now, what this is going to do, I'll show you in a second, is it's going to allow us to have a drop-down list when we're choosing this on our item. We also want to uncheck this box on the bottom so that we do not allow users to enter their own text, right? We don't want them to put in their own choices, anybody out there. So we want them to have to go in and be able to edit these fields, edit the multiple choice list before adding. And then you can also require this. So I'm going to require this on the list items for any inventory or assembly parts, right? Maybe for parts or service, but for this example, it doesn't matter. So it's going to be required going forward. Anytime we put in a new item, they have to choose which cycle count they're part of. Those required fields can get quite annoying though, so I understand people don't want to do that. Okay, so now I have cycle count here. So I've dropped down choices, CY banana, apple, and cherry. Okay, now of course I could go through and edit each one by one, but that would take too much time. So we're going to go down and do paste from Excel. Now the IIF file import that we're about to talk about in the next section, you could probably utilize the IIF file import to do this, to update this. If you have a lot of parts, you don't have to come in and use this paste from Excel. What I tell people is if you are updating over 1,000 lines, the paste from Excel is probably not the best way to go. We should figure out a different way. Of course, I just have a couple down here. So I'm going to go ahead and use this paste from Excel to mass update. So the first thing we want to do in here is I'm going to customize my columns, and I do have the cycle count already down here showing. It's just far off to the right. So I'm going to move it up and up next to the item name. So all I'm doing here is I'm just showing you how you can easily, right, choose, go in and choose. So we're going to say CY apple for the champagne flute. Then I'm just going to copy this down so it just mass fills it in, and then we'll say CY banana, copy down, and then we'll just say the Turbis 2 gets a CY cherry. So just ways to easily fill this in if you guys are going to start to use this process. But this is really nice. If you go in and you set up this custom field with cycle counts, it'll make life much easier when you're going in and doing the cycle count themselves. Okay, so we'll go ahead and save the changes. Okay. All right. Haven't seen any questions come in. Just making sure I'm not missing anything. If anybody has any questions at that point before we dive in. All right, perfect. So we're going to go ahead and launch the second poll here. Which version of QuickBooks are you using currently? Or if you use more than one, which ones do you use the most often? Wow, I've seen a lot of QuickBooks Enterprise come in. Lots and lots of QuickBooks Enterprise. That's amazing. It's definitely made just a huge comeback, I feel like, over the last 4 or 5 years. Desktop is thriving and doing great. And all these changes are just so exciting. All right, give people a couple more seconds. Of course, I'm looking at this list and thinking, where's QBO? A couple people who don't use QuickBooks. I'd be interested to know what products you do use. If you want to put those in chat, I'm always interested to see what other products people use. All right, let's go ahead and close that poll, and I will share it with you so you can see who your fellow audience members are, what they're using. Okay, go ahead and close out. All right, so everybody excited? I'm excited. Whew. Okay, so now we're going to get into the actual cycle counts. So first of all, again, we're going to start off looking at cycle counts with Excel, and then the second one we're going to go through is cycle counts with an Android. So coming back here into our cycle count dashboard, we're going to go ahead and create a new cycle count. Now notice again, the creation ID is grayed out, can't edit it, so that's there. Count ID is grayed out, can't edit it, so it's a system generated. And then we can choose our site that we're counting. So I'm going to go ahead and count Austin. And then you can choose who this is going to be assigned to. Now, if you have not seen any of these webinars before, the warehouse user, how to get somebody to show up on this list is by setting them up as a vendor and choosing vendor type warehouse. That's how they get to show up on this list. So I'm going to go ahead and assign this to just warehouse user for now. Okay, now since we have the find and select available, right? So using this find and select, this is something that's available in enterprise only. We can come in here. If you have a lot of items, I suggest narrowing it down just to search through your custom fields only. Of course, I just have a couple, so it doesn't matter. But if I were to come in here and say find Apple, it's going to narrow it down for me that everything's in my, anything that's in my CY Apple cycle count, and then I can add these 3 selected. So now, of course, when, oops, I just bypassed something I want to show you. Of course, when you are setting up your custom field, you want to make sure to choose, like I chose apple, banana, cherry, because I wouldn't have any items or any item descriptions that say apple, banana, or cherry. And because we're going to use that find and select, hopefully you'll use this find and select. That's why you want to make sure and set it that up that way. Let me do find and select again, Apple, and say search. Okay, so one thing that I bypassed, but I wanted to show you guys, is that if you have never received or basically done anything with an inventory part at a particular location, so never received it in, never transferred to, never adjusted into a location, then that item will not be able to be part of the cycle count. Because basically the cycle count system is saying, you've never had this item here, so why are you counting it, right? So it has to have been in that warehouse at some point if you're using multiple warehouses for it to show up here. So it's basically saying, I'm not going to count that champagne flute too because I've never received it in here. Now, if I went in real quick and I entered a bill to the glass store, and I received in champagne flute 2 to Austin. When I go back and create my cycle count and I do find and select for Apple and add, now it'll allow me to add it. Okay, so just a little nugget there. Now down below, we do have notes here, but those will not be exported to Excel, so we'll not do that in this version. Mine's defaulting to send to device because I already have the Android device hooked in. If you did not have your Android device hooked in, then it would default to create and export. So I'm going to go ahead and create and export to Excel. Okay, and let's go ahead and move over here. Nice little small Excel spreadsheet. So it pushed all of the information out to Excel for me, right? And of course, I do have the ability to modify this in here, so I could remove these columns, etc. But it will not allow me to import this back in if I remove any of these columns or make any changes. Okay, so you want to be aware of that. You've got to have these columns set up as is in order for you to be able to import it back in. Okay, that's one thing. The other thing though is that whenever we provide people count sheets, physical count sheets, we probably want to hide this quantity field. So maybe hide it before printing it, or maybe hide it and lock it before sending it over, or just know that you're going to have to add that back in later. So the idea is that we would go through and we would fill in our counts. So we're going to say this one was perfect, 118. This one, we actually have 4 more than we expected. Wouldn't that be nice if we randomly found more inventory than we expected to have? And then we have 685 of these. Now in the notes, you can add in notes here. So two damaged, whatever it is, and those will be coming back in. Okay. So let me go ahead and save this. I'm just going to save it to my desktop. And sorry, I thought it would default to my desktop. And a delete and test cycle count. Okay, so now that we've updated this, again, now if I had removed a column here, it would not bring this back in. So you need to make sure that you have the original template that they provide you to import it back in, okay? Now going back into QuickBooks, we have our import from Excel button. And if I go ahead and click import, okay, and then it takes me and tells me I need to find my file that I'm importing. And now it says cycle counts were imported successfully. So prior to doing that, just really quickly, right, we have open status, Austin, etc. Now it moves in and it says status complete on this line. So note there were a couple statuses, right? Open is not counted, pending, review, which we'll talk about here. Complete means that the quantity counted matches the quantity on hand, so there's nothing for us to do. Now these two down below have some differences. One has 4 extras and one has -12. Okay, so they're pending review. And of course I can see my note in here with the 2 damaged. Okay, so then I can come in and check off this first one that says complete. I can just go ahead and mark it as closed because we're done, right? I'm not going to do anything with that. We don't have to make any adjustments or anything. And then, and of course I can filter this by status. So if I wanted to just look at all my pending, it makes it a little bit easier to stomach, right? All that, less noise. Then I can come back to these other 2 lines that we imported, and I can come down to batch transactions and say adjust quantity on hand. Okay, so it takes me into the quantity adjustment screen automatically. Couple of things to note, it does just pick the quantity, not the quantity and value. It picks up today's date, the adjustment account, cost of goods sold. If you change this, it'll pick up what you did last time. The inventory site's appropriate, and it picks up the items that are adjusted, what the new quantity is, quantity difference. Now, one thing to note here is that notice that the total value of the adjustment right now says 0. Okay, so I saw this the first time. I said, oh, that's not going to work. I'm just going to adjust the value right back in. No. So, however, when I say, even if I, sorry, let me just show you this. Even if I say switch to quantity value, it doesn't do anything here. But as soon as I say save and new, and I go previous, it actually did update the quantity value. As soon as I hit save, it adjusts the quantity value based on the average cost, or FIFO if you're using it, right, of what the parts are as of that date that you're adjusting it. Okay, so very cool. We made that adjustment. Much easier to make this adjustment. Again, I wouldn't suggest doing 10,000 lines at a time. I haven't tested it with that many, but usually with anything, we like to do about 100 at a time in QuickBooks for things like this. So if you can. So let me go back to the cycle count screen here. It's still showing as pending, but they are checked off still. Okay, so there's not like an additional status of like adjusted or anything like that. So it's still showing pending, and then I can go down and mark them as closed. Okay. So let me go ahead and answer a couple questions real quick, and then we'll switch over to the Android. So it looks like why was a custom data field set up as part of a cycle count import? So the reason that hopefully you saw that, Lance, the reason we did is because when we create a new cycle count, a way to quickly find the items that are part of this cycle count would be to set up that custom field, right? So it's just a field so that it can easily be filled in here. So hopefully you saw that. Do the advanced and enhanced inventory features work on multiple company files for a user or only the primary account? I'm not sure what that means. So each of those features, advanced and enhanced inventory features, it's per company file. So of course, when you're in QuickBooks Desktop, right, you can have as many company files as you want, as long as your server or computer can handle it. And in each file, you can decide if you're going to use advanced inventory or not, or enhanced inventory or not. So hopefully that answers your question. All right. Super exciting, so much easier than the way we used to have to do it, especially the way that it automatically fills in that adjustment form for you, and the way that it imports from Excel. So I just love this. I love that we're able to do it whether or not we're using the Android device. All right, so let's go ahead and switch on over to the Android device. So if you guys have seen some of our other webinars, and again, if we have time at the end of this, we'll look at the Android device was introduced last year. In 2017, we did pick. You could pick a sales order using an Android device. In February 2018, they added receiving against a purchase order using an Android device. In September 2018, they added pack and ship on that device. And then now we're adding, just so exciting. So you can use any Android device. I think it has to be Android 5.5 and above, but any Android device that you buy out there will have that now. There are a few options for Bluetooth scanners that will connect in. So if you have any questions on the hardware with that, you can ping us and we can give you some information about that. Just quickly, I've shown this on previous webinars, which is why I'm touching on this quickly. But if you are setting up your Android device, the way you go about doing that is you go to Items and Inventory and Company Preferences. Of course, you'll have to be in single user mode. Advanced Inventory Settings. And then over on the side here, we have a 5th tab now called Site Operations. And this is where you can enable the sales order and purchase order fulfillment worksheet. So it's a different looking worksheet that offers more functionality than the previous ones. Well, purchase order, we didn't really have one, but sales order fulfillment. And then this is also where you can go in and add devices. And it's pretty simple. You just click add the device. Inside the device, you put in the 4-digit code and it syncs them. The first time you do this, you'll also need to log into your Intuit account. So make sure to have that accessible. And you can add, from what I've heard, you can add unlimited devices. So of course, whenever I hear that, I'm like, oh, well, let's test it. But I don't have unlimited devices to test, but obviously out there. So it's not limited in how many you can add. Hopefully you wouldn't add too many because it could be kind of confusing. We did have a customer who's using this who was saying, well, how do I know which device is which? So if I need to remove a device. So what we did was we got little stickers and we put them, we put the last 4 digits or last digits here of the device ID on the back of the device itself so that they could know which ones they need to remove if it, goes kablooey. Okay. All right, on the device itself, you can go to the App Store. So this is Android only. Go into the App Store and search for QuickBooks Warehouse. You download the QuickBooks Desktop Warehouse app on your device, and then you have it accessible for you there. Okay, so let's go ahead and take a look. So I'm going to go ahead and do another cycle count. And I'm going to do inventory site Austin. And I'm going to leave it unassigned for now because I thought this was pretty neat, something I stumbled upon around the unassigned, especially with these cycle counts. It's nice if you have, 50 cycle counts that need to be done in December 31st of this year. People can just go in and grab them. So I'm going to go ahead and do find and select again. I'll just do the Apple, same thing. Keep on that Apple trend and add those items. Now I can put notes in here. Please count ASAP, or please count first, maybe. That's something we would say. And then we can go ahead and send it to the device. Okay, cycle count has been sent. So if you give me a second here, I always have to log into my Android device and get my screen sharing showing. I know that there's always questions. Everyone always says, why Android only? Why not Apple? So I obviously Intuit makes decisions. They make all these decisions, but I definitely supported them doing Android only because I wanted them to focus and make it amazing, right? Writing in Android versus writing on an Apple iOS is like writing on for Mac or versus desktop, right? Or versus Windows. So I said, let's focus and make Android amazing. Plus Androids are a little bit cheaper, I feel like. And people tend to be less afraid of them running around their warehouse. So, okay, so let me go ahead and share my screen. Oops, nope, I'm sorry. Clicked on offers. Okay. There it is. Whew. Sometimes I get nervous that's not going to show up. Okay, and I know that this is small, so I'm going to make it as big as I possibly can here. Okay, so going into my apps, I'm definitely not as Android savvy as I am iPhone. So I have my QuickBooks Desktop Warehouse app down here, so I can go ahead and click into that. Once I click into the warehouse app here, I can choose which warehouse user I'm logging in as. So I'm going to log in as Rob Warehouse. Now, of course, if you haven't seen some of the other webinars around this, you do not need to have access to QuickBooks at all to use this warehouse app, right? You don't have to be a QuickBooks user. You can just come in and only have access to this, which is part of the reason why this is amazing. So you can actually extend how many people have access to your QuickBooks file, right, by having them have access to these features. So in here, we have receive, pick, pack, and I have cycle count. So I'm going to go ahead and click on cycle count down below. Now, it's so small, I'm sorry. It says here assigned to me, I promise, even though it's super teeny, and then it has unassigned. So I have one assigned to me, and then I can also click on the unassigned and see all unassigned counts. So if you're not going to assign them to a particular user, you can see all the unassigned counts in here, and people can come in and just grab them. So like I said, if you have 5 or 6 people responsible for doing the counts at year end, stick them all in there as unassigned, and then people can grab them, and as they grab them, it assigns it to them. So I'm going to go ahead and grab this one that we just made down below here. Please count first. It says, would you like to assign this to yourself? I say yes. Now I have my 3 items that I'm going to count here. So my champagne flute, I'm going to go ahead and say I'm going to count 110, I guess, and say count. Then the champagne flute 2, I'm just going to say we have 30 and say done and count. And notice I can add notes along the way here as well. And my mugs, I'm going to say that I have 36. I don't know why it's okay and done. It's going to be a big adjustment on the mugs, I think. And say count. Okay, so now I've gone through and counted, and I'll talk about barcode scanning and some of the other things here in a minute that you can do. But I can, now that they're all counted, I can go ahead and mark it finished. And then it says, good job, right? So giving your employees a little bit of feedback there. Thank you for doing that, amazing job. Back to tasks, and now I can move on to the next one, right? So now there's only 3 here sitting in the unassigned. So very simple to use, very intuitive to use for your Android device users there. Let me just see if there's any questions on the device real quick before I shut it down. I don't see any questions around the device. So I'm going to go ahead. It's pretty simple, right? So I'm going to go ahead and shut that down. Okay. Now, of course, back in my screen here, right, I have to hit refresh to be able to see anything updated. So now we have our 3 pending review. We have the 110, -8 difference here. We have the 25 here, and then we have the 685. So now if I wanted to, or I'm sorry, 36, -649. So if I wanted to, I could say, okay, this is probably wrong. I need somebody to go back and count it. Let me mark this as closed and create a new cycle count, tell them to go back and count it again. Because I mean, that's a huge difference, right? Probably counted the wrong item or something. Okay, but the rest of the process steps from there are pretty much the same. You know, obviously we go through and we do the adjustments, and then we mark them as closed. Okay, a couple of notes. Lot numbers. So again, in enterprise, you can do serial or lot numbers. Lot numbers cannot be used on a handheld, but serial numbers you can. I was told that you can scan the serial numbers instead of the barcode numbers. I've not tested that yet, but that's what I was told when you're doing these these counts. Also, I already talked about the status as being complete. Okay. Now, of course, let me go ahead and go into the questions real quick before I push forward. All right, so it says, can you find search by inventory location bin, as we would want to do cycle counts by specific inventory location? So when you have bins turned on, yes. So I just don't have bins turned on. I was told making multiple adjustments in inventory is not good and can look suspicious to an auditor. Can you please shed some light on this? So that's 100% correct. You should not, hopefully we're not making inventory adjustments that often. However, just like when, you know, year end, we expect that there's going to be some tax adjustments. It's very normal to have inventory adjustments. What you want to have is you just want to have consistency, right? So if you do it once a quarter, you do it once a month, you do it whatever it is, just have consistency. And that's where it doesn't look suspicious. Okay. That's my advice, at least. Okay. Can you complete an item in the CC screen without going to the inventory adjustment form? So yes, you can, Lance. I can just say complete, but it won't do the adjustment if I just mark it complete. It'll just close it out and say, I don't want to do this adjustment, basically. Is there a way to see on the dashboard that the adjustment has been made? So if you, let's see. Oh, no, they don't have it here that the adjustment has been made. No. You can just see that it's closed. But that's good feedback. Thanks, Lisa. Okay. All right, so a couple quick questions there. Let's go ahead and do our next poll, our third poll. Gosh, that time went by so fast. So how do you, or the majority of the businesses that you work with, do inventory counts? Okay, man, I thought for sure I'd have time left over, but I guess I just get so excited. There's so many little nuances with this. But I guess it's better. I got to spend more time compared to the what's new in QuickBooks Enterprise 2019. I didn't even get to touch on everything. Okay. Again, if there's feedback to better the product, always wanting to hear that as well. Okay, so the last thing that we're going to touch on here is just going to be brief. We're going to look at the IIF files importing. I think that will take us right up against time. So once we finish out this poll, give everybody a couple more seconds. Looks like we have a lot of people who are doing full manual inventory counts. So hopefully you'll be able to take advantage of this. Again, this is QuickBooks Enterprise Platinum only. So if you need assistance with getting moved into Platinum, I think that they've got promos going on this week. So just definitely let us know. We always are able to get our clients the best pricing. And a lot of times we have offers that aren't always available from Intuit directly. So definitely let us know. Also, sometimes it's confusing. There are a lot of products out there to know which product. I know I'm saying QuickBooks Enterprise Platinum, but like, do I need it hosted? Do I not need it hosted? There's so many questions. So we can help you kind of navigate those waters. Okay. Hopefully the ones that aren't doing inventory audits, that's because you don't have inventory parts. Okay, so let's go ahead and jump on over to IIF files, because this kind of affects, this is what I was saying earlier, it's kind of talks, it's around inventory, it's around items. So a couple big things we talked about in September. So the IIF file import. So of course for years, we said don't import using IIF files. For people who are not aware of what they are, basically if you go into File Utilities, you can export your lists only, no transactions inside of QuickBooks, to IIF file. You can also go in and import IIF files into your QuickBooks file. You can import transactions via IIF file. There are a lot of payroll companies out there that do that, including Intuit. There are a lot of systems that are third-party applications that use IIF files for importing data into QuickBooks. It's a one-way import in, right? So But anyway, so that's that. Previously, we did not recommend them because IIF File would parse the data and push it into the database directly. They were very quick. You could get a ton of items in very quickly, but they would cause problems like crazies with customers long terms, and it wouldn't show up immediately. It would show up 6 months down the road that we saw some kind of corruption underlying there. The old process had very few validations happening, and there was no assistance with knowing what did or did not import. It would just kick back at a certain point, and nothing beyond that would be imported. Okay. Also, as a reminder, IIF files can now be imported in multi-user mode. So I know that was a big deal for a lot of people. So the change that they made is that the data now flows through the SDK like other programs. And the SDK or software development kit does validations on the data being imported and corrects it where necessary. And then the third change, of course, was that there's an error log, which now shows you which lines did or did not import. Now, during release, we of course said like, hey, we have not tested this. We need, we'll need some time to test this with big customers before we really like get behind saying that this is a good thing to utilize. And that's continuing. We're continuing to test. I'm still on edge about it, but I'm gaining more confidence with this import option. But they made some changes. There were a couple errors with the item importing, just because the format that it was in, they had to make some modifications too. Okay. So now that it goes through the SDK also, it will be a little slower, but in any importing world, slow is good. It means the data is handled better. It means there's less options for corruption and less issues down the line. So in product here, we're going to go ahead and go utilities and export the list to IIF file. And we're going to export the items list. This is probably the list that I see dealt with in an IIF file format the most, because people go in and mass update descriptions or mass update whatever prices or whatever through using these. So we're going to export the items list. Okay. And I'm just going to call this items. Now with any IIF file, you can't just, or at least I can't, maybe somebody else knows how to do this. I can't just go in, let me close out my cycle count here. I can't just go in and open it. I have to go into Excel and browse, get to the folder where it's located, choose all files instead of just all Excel files, and then I can see my items file there. So we'll go ahead and open it up. Now it goes into this test import wizard step, but you can go ahead and say finish, because Excel is smart enough to know how to delineate the columns here. So the stuff up top, you can leave, but it really doesn't matter. I mean, you want to leave, but it's not information that we're going to focus on today. Down below here is where we're going to focus. So we have, anytime you see the exclamation point, that's saying, hey, here's some information about that you're about to see. So, hey, here's some inventory parts that you're about to see. Here's the names. You can see all the names of my inventory parts, reference numbers, timestamp, and it has a whole bunch of different columns along here. So I'm not going to focus on that. Notice though that the custom fields, ooh, look at that. We could fill in these custom fields here if we need to mass update the custom fields, if we were going to use that little extra nugget there that I shared. So now before, when we had the IIF file, it would have two columns. This one would say quantity and this one would say quantity. Now they changed it. This one says quantity and this one says value. Now notice that these quantities and values really don't always add up to what's actually in the system. So not important to focus on what's there. Things that we would want to update though, perhaps update the price, update the costs, update the preferred vendor, right? So not things that take transactions to build up, but things that are just list items. Okay, so I'm going to do in here Champagne Flute 2, 1, or I'm just going to delete some of these because I'm not going to update all of them. And I'm going to go ahead and say, okay, so quantity, I'm not going to update the quantity, so I'm not going to touch that, but I am going to update the price and I'm going to update the cost. And I'll say this one goes to 12 and 6. Now this one down below here, I'm going to set it up to say mug blue, and then I'll show you what happens with that. Okay, so I changed the name of the item, but everything else is going to stay the same. Well, I'll put in a quantity of 10 and 1,000 here. Okay. Now we'll go ahead and say save. Now, obviously, price and cost don't equal out there because this is more like 100, but we'll go ahead and say save. So I've updated my sheet. Everything looks nice. Now when we go back into QuickBooks, I'm going to go to File, Utilities, and import my IIF file. Okay. So I choose Import IIF File. I can come in here, navigate to my file here. Now, if you were working in Excel and you save it as an Excel spreadsheet, you need to make sure to go back and save it as a text file and then put .iif as the extension at the end of the file name so you get it back in here. Because if it's not in that format, you will not see it when you go to import. So go ahead and say open, and it's going to go through and import. A couple things with this. Oh, well, it didn't kick back the error that it gave me yesterday. So when we go in and import those lists, oops. So when we go look at our items now, I do have my champagne flute, and I have 10 of them, or price is 10, right? Cost is 4, so it updated those for me. Again, you could update the custom fields as well. It did add my blue mug here, mug blue, $2.50, $5. It does pick up an average cost of 10 here. But when I go look at my inventory adjustment, and I say previous, I got to go back a couple. There we go. Here's my mug blue. So it picked up quantity 10. I don't know why it didn't pick up. I'd have to test this why. It worked yesterday. I don't know why it did that, but a couple things to note here. So it did import in a quantity adjustment for me, right? So it not only did it set up my item on the items list, it also imported a quantity adjustment. Now it didn't do a quantity or value adjustment for any of the items that already existed, only for the new one. And it, on here, it adjusted it naturally to opening balance equity. So you can go in and change that if you need to. And it picked up unspecified site, because obviously there's nowhere on there where I can say which site these are in. So that's something to note as well. So it's best if you have multiple sites, not to do it this way. If you add in 100 new items that are new via this IIF file import, you will get 100 inventory adjustments. Okay, it's not one with 100 lines on it. It will be 100 inventory adjustments. So that's just something to know. Okay. Oh my gosh, we're running out of time. So let me go ahead and launch our 4th poll here. Which new feature are you the most excited about in 2019? Again, I know that it's a lot to take in when we learn these new features. There's a lot of stuff around inventory, and not everybody likes to work in inventory necessarily. Oops, sorry. All the time, but what I always encourage people to show is if you come across clients with it, make sure to bring it up. Even if you are not going to continue working with the client, or even if it's, you know, somebody you're not going to take, it's not in your wheelhouse, bring up this features. We definitely want to support Intuit in making these changes. We want to show them as our, you know, we're the community that supports them. We want to show them that these changes are important to us and that we want them to continue to make these changes in the future. So definitely bring it up. Bring it up. I encourage any of the consultants on this line to bring it up. At least it's year end, right? It's the perfect time. Bring it up at least like 3 times in the next week. Okay, so it looks like people are excited about Pick, Pack, Ship, even though we didn't show it today. So if you need to go back and watch that other webinar of ours, you can go back and do that. Lots of excitement around the IIF file import. I knew that was like the smallest thing when they launched in 2019, but I know that a lot of people use those. So a lot of excitement there. And of course, cycle count. So I'm excited people are interested in that. Let's go ahead and close this poll. Okay. All right. So we're going to go ahead and wrap things up. So again, I'm Marjorie Adams. If you have any questions, I'll stay on here for just a minute longer to answer any questions, but I appreciate your time today. I hope you guys learned something new and exciting, and definitely let us know if there are any questions that come up. We are available for you here at Fourlane.
Marjorie, thank you so much. Great session once again. Thank you for bringing all these great updates to the audience today. Really appreciate it. I know our audience does as well. Thank you once again to Marjorie and Fourlane. To our audience, thank you so much for attending. You can see Marjorie's contact contact information there. Any questions you posted during this webinar, we will be sending Marjorie a full report later today, so she'll still have a chance to reach out. We also record the session. We'll make that link available to you in the post-webinar email. We'll do our best to get your CP processed a little later today as well. You should see that in your account by tomorrow. Thanks so much, everyone. Hope to see you all at future webinars.